Striped bass are found primarily along the east coast from the St. Johns River in Florida to the Gulf of St. Lawrence, and along the Gulf Coast from the Apalachicola River to Louisiana. The largest concentrations of striped bass are found in the area from the mid-Atlantic states through southern New England, ranging from North Carolina to the southern Gulf of Maine. Principal spawning areas include Chesapeake Bay, the Hudson River, the Delaware River, and the Roanoke River Albemarle Sound area. The Chesapeake Bay area is by far the single most important spawning ground for rockfish. The bay's many tidal estuaries and backwaters provides a vast amount of natal and nursery habitat. The broad, shallow bay itself is a fertile feeding ground for juvenile rockfish. Although population estimates vary from year to year, Chesapeake spawned fish generally comprise 75 to 80% of the total migratory population. The Hudson River contributes an additional 15 to 20%, with all other areas combined adding about 5 to 10%. The behavior patterns and life history of striped bass are complex and variable, often depending on location. Not all striped bass behave the same way at the same age. For example, while about 50% of females reach sexual maturity by 4 or 5 years of age, the remaining half takes 6 to 9 years to mature. Males, however, generally mature earlier, at 2 or 3 years old. Migration patterns are similarly complicated. The journey taken by an individual striper is subject to a number of variables. Rockfish south of North Carolina are essentially non-migratory. Canadian stocks of striped bass make short, localized migrations along the coast. The general pattern of migration for most mid-Atlantic striped bass is for mature adults to gather during the winter months off the Virginia and North Carolina coasts. They will remain here until mid-spring, when they return to their natal rivers to spawn. Soon after spawning, adults will leave freshwater and will travel north along the coast. Females begin each season's migration, leaving earlier than the males. But since males reach sexual maturity at an earlier age, they will begin making coastal migrations several seasons earlier than females of the same age. For some, the destination is the waters of coastal New Jersey or New York. Many enter Narragansett Bay in Rhode Island. But most will spend the months of summer and early autumn feeding near the islands of Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket, near Cape Cod, or in the southern Gulf of Maine. A few will travel as far as the northern Gulf of Maine, or into the Bay of Fundy. By mid-autumn, the migration is reversed, and the stripers return south once again. Some Delaware and Hudson River fish will travel only as far as the waters off the New Jersey coast. But most fish of all stocks return to the mid-Atlantic overwintering grounds. By early April, mature striped bass have begun to move into the mouths of their natal rivers. While some may travel as much as 200 miles upstream, most will spawn in the slightly brackish or freshwater sections just above the upper estuaries of large rivers, in waters less than 20 feet deep. Water temperature is the key factor in determining when spawning will occur. Peak spawning activity occurs when the water is about 60 to 65 degrees in temperature. This generally occurs from mid-April to mid-May in the mid-Atlantic region. Females will release their eggs at or near the surface as nearby males release milt to fertilize them. Towards the end of their natural lifespan, a large, healthy female can distribute 10 times as many, releasing over 4 million eggs in a single season. Similar to many other types of fish, striped bass release large numbers of eggs to offset intense predation. During early life stages, they are preyed on by many other species. The eggs depend on sufficient river current and tidal flow to keep them suspended. Any eggs which fall to the bottom are unlikely to hatch. Eggs which remain afloat will hatch in 1.5 to 3 days, again depending on water temperature. The eggs hatch to release larvae which are about 1/4 of an inch long. The attached yolk sac and oil globule will continue to feed the larvae for about a week. They will then begin to feed on microscopic organisms called zooplankton suspended in the water. Larvae will continue to feed in the open water of their natal river for 4 to 6 weeks, drifting slowly downstream. When the young have grown to be about 1¼ inches long, they develop into the juvenile stage and more closely resemble adults. They will begin to exhibit schooling behavior, forming groups of as many as several thousand fish. As the summer months pass, they will move downstream into saltier water, inhabiting the inshore tidal creeks of the upper to mid-estuary. Migration patterns for older juveniles vary with location. In most coastal areas, the young of the year will move into the lower estuary during their first autumn, and will spend the winter months there or in the adjacent offshore waters. Subadults from the Hudson and Delaware rivers will develop a pattern of moving generally north and east during the spring and summer, then south and west during the fall and winter, traveling further and further each year. Upon reaching sexual maturity, many will join the offshore migration from North Carolina in the winter to New England in summer. Others will retain the more local migratory pattern, gathering off the coast of New Jersey in winter. In the Chesapeake Bay area, immature rockfish remain in the tidal freshwater or brackish stretches of their natal river for 2 years. During the spring of their second year, they move through the lower estuaries into the open bay, moving generally north during the summer. By autumn, they move inshore and southward, settling into the deep channels of the lower bay during winter. Recent research has shown that some immature subadults travel further south, leaving the bay to join migrating adults gathered off the Virginia and North Carolina coasts. In the spring, they will follow adults returning to spawn back into the bay. Some adult fish will remain within the bay, feeding year-round even after reaching sexual maturity.